I mean, you'd be surprised how many business owners just legitimately don't track data. Was that if you're getting zero attention, then nothing downstream matters. And so people do the 80% of work that produces 20% of the results instead of doing that 20%. Problem is, probably 90% of people just get stuck in the like, I want to do this thing, but never actually go out and end up doing the thing. I think the thing that people really don't understand about digital assets is that they overcomplicate it in their mind. It's not something real. It's not something tangible. They've all probably seen somebody making money on the internet, but they don't actually realize that in the day and age that we're going into, it's becoming more and more of a clear-cut way to create something that isn't just reliant on your primary profession. It allows you to build something real, something meaningful, something that is an asset that can produce, but in a new found way, leveraging the technology, internet, all of those other things. So the thing that separates, something that's just like a vanity digital income thing from something that really actually produces is that a lot of people will chase the short-term hype, the short-term income. You see this a lot in like the trading space. They're like, oh, I can turn $1,000 into $100,000 at, 100% a month in this many months. And it's mostly fluff, right? And so really what becomes an asset is understanding the mechanism that actually creates the output and the results you want. If you can drive attention, then you can get interest. If you can get interest, then you can get leads. If you can get leads, you can get customers, right? And so if you can build that type of a machine, that type of an engine, then you can actually build a predictable asset that can take attention on one end and generate sales on the other end. Yeah, the main reason people fail generally when it comes to building a funnel or some kind of a digital asset, I would say is absolutely that a lot of people aren't willing to do the boring work because the main thing that really derives funnel that are successful from ones that aren't is mass amounts of iteration. It's literally just like do it over and over, make a little change, analyze the results, make another change, make a little change, analyze the results, make another change based on the data you're getting back, right? And so I think it's probably a two-layer, or people just aren't willing to do the boring work. If they are, they're not actually getting data. And if they're not tracking data well, then the decisions they make are poor. And so the changes that they're making to the funnel aren't actually turning into the funnel producing better. And so it's really like do the iteration, analyze the data and have a good way of capturing data and then make good decisions, right? Business mostly just comes down to decisions. You have an unlimited amount of decisions you can make, and you have to narrow it down to what do I think the decision that has the most leverage is, and how do I put more focus and attention on that small decision that will have the bigger output. I mean, you'd be surprised how many business owners just legitimately don't track data. You'll sit down and be like, okay, cool, let's see what's going on. Like, what is your, average cost per lead? And they have no idea. And you're like, how are you going to make a change or iterate or figure out what's wrong if we don't even know the numbers or the data throughout the funnel? And so I think the main issue is that people don't know what decision to make to improve. I think that can create anxiety and stress for a lot of people because they're like, I want this to be better, but I don't know what to change to make it better. And so if they can start by actually getting the proper data throughout the different stages and steps of the funnel, then you can actually make the changes that are needed to see the results you want. When you haven't done it before, it feels difficult and it feels tricky. And so a lot of people just tend to be like, I'll figure it out later. Let me work on whatever other task to try to make my thing better. But they don't realize that they might be working on a useless task because they're not looking at the data that would inform what they should actually work on. Ultimately, it's really a combination of metrics. We need to know on the front end, obviously, if they're actually effectively driving attention, right? And so that first metric is largely if they're running paid advertisement, for example. is going to be click-through rate. What is the percentage of people that are actually interested in clicking? If the click-through rate is high, it generally means that there is some interest in the marketplace and that they are talking to some kind of an avatar that's interested, right? And so it's like, that would be the first step. Are we actually getting clicks? Once we know that we're getting clicks and the advertising is doing its job, then we can measure the other, stats within the funnel. And that would be, cost per lead or cost per application. That would be, book call percentage. It would be also if, for example, you're doing lead scoring or something of that sort, like what percentage of the leads that are applying or opting in are high quality enough for what you're trying to do, right? And so it's kind of like measuring both the cost, but also the quality of who's coming through. And so in my view, there's kind of like three main stages of the funnel. There's like the attention and like driving clicks and the proper clicks on the front end. The second piece would be actually, is that attention, like landing page conversion rate, is that attention converting into actual like leads, people who have interest? And then the final layer, the third layer, is kind of the sales process layer. If they've shown interest, is there the other necessary requisites for them to go from interest to let me actually make a decision and decide to move forward? I would say the primary bottleneck, obviously, certain people just haven't done the work on the ad side and they haven't put enough ad volume or figured out how to drive the right clicks. But I would say in most funnels, if they're, again, driving paid traffic and they're actually getting attention, because that's the prerequisite. If you're getting zero attention, then nothing downstream matters, right? And so you have to be getting attention first. And if you are getting attention, whether that be organic or paid advertisement, then the next stage is going to be, okay, cool, what's actually happening on the page that they're landing at, and are you conveying the value of what you do well enough? And I would say that's where most people stuff breaks down, because if they can't communicate what it is to the avatar in the proper way, then you're never going to move past the stage of going from attention to actual like real interest and leads. Yeah, so the main thing that makes landing pages work or not work, there's really only three pieces. Now, there's obviously different types of landing pages. So you might have a landing page that actually has a video on it, or you might have a landing page that's just copy, right? But ultimately, there's still just three main determining factors. It's the headline. Obviously, the headline is largely a congruency signal. So headline comes down to, if somebody clicks an ad and they land on the page, is the first thing they read congruent with the ad that they saw originally? And if it is, then you're telling them, okay, cool, you're at the right place, you clicked the right thing. And so then they'll continue on to seeing what else is on the page. The next is going to be like the main form of communication, whether that's an actual video or it's just copy. This is where you communicate the value of whatever it is that your offer and whatever's coming next. And then it's going to be what the actual question or the intake form is that gets them to give you your information. And so those are kind of the main three things. It's like each step is just created to get people to take an action on the next step. So a lot of people think that like, oh, I need to fully sell my offer on the front end, but that's not always true. Like the goal of the headline is to get people to consume the other information on the page, whether that's a video or the other copy. And the point of the video or the copy is to get people to apply or, put in their information and move into becoming a lead. And so your goal isn't necessarily to sell the offer, it's to sell them applying or booking a call or whatever it is that you want them, the next step for them to be. So those are kind of the variables that control it. Is it congruent, and does it get them to consume the info? Does the info get them to take the next step in moving forward? Yeah, so the sales process actually starts long before the actual like sales closer or salesperson even necessarily gets involved, right? So from the moment someone decides to apply, move forward, book a call, whatever they're doing through that funnel, you're going to get to a page, right? Like a thank you page is the standard terminology for it, or a confirmation page. Now, the job is really to create a lot of systems once they've opted in, because a lot of people, when they say watch a VSL or go to a page and then apply, that doesn't really mean that they necessarily have massive intent yet. They have interest, but not necessarily massive intent. And so until they've actually applied, they're kind of in, like, I'll call it, energy conservation mode, and they're not really deciding to move forward. They're kind of just quickly looking through the information to see if it's relevant or interesting to them. But once they've made that step of being like, okay, cool, now I've become a lead, now they're really paying attention. So a lot of the media, videos, copy, emails, text messages, all the things that come after this stage where they actually apply is the piece that is actually what drives a lot of the sale. It's not necessarily what was on the initial page. And so a process, so the salesperson, it's not really about selling. It's more about seeing, hey, is this a good fit? Is this a win-win? Does this make sense? We really just want, like, cated order takers that are able to facilitate the transaction, as opposed to just like, okay, cool, like now your job is to like hard close people, because that's not a good experience for the customer, and it's not something the closer wants to do either. Their job is really to identify, is this actually a good fit for you? And if it is a good fit, let me help you in like getting started and moving forward. Yeah, I think fundamentally why people don't do the work is not necessarily laziness. It's that it's very easy to get caught up in doing busy work as opposed to doing effective work. And so there's so many people out there that work really hard, that really want the results, they really want the outcomes. However, they are doing activities that have a low output, right? Very, common principle is like the Pareto principle, right? And so people do the 80% of work that produces 20% of the results, instead of doing that 20%, that really uncomfortable stuff, to produce the bigger result. So it really comes down to kind of figuring out what is the highest leverage thing that I can do, and then doing that work that's extremely uncomfortable, that you don't really feel like doing, but when you do it, it has a big output. And so figuring out what is the uncomfortable thing that I'm trying to currently ignore that will actually give me the biggest output, and then just dedicating a lot more time to that activity. And the thing is, when you do it more, you get comfortable in doing it and you stop disliking it. You'll start to actually like that more. Now, the thing is that once you really, really like it, you're probably now needing to shift your attention to something else that's uncomfortable that you probably don't want to do. But that's kind of the game. It's like, you got to figure out what is the highest leverage thing that I can do, and how can I allocate more time to that high leverage activity. And I still wouldn't necessarily say it's laziness. It's probably just lack of belief. And so a lot of people just need to get out there. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was telling me about this business idea, and he has a good job. He makes over six figures, but he's telling me about this business idea and giving me all the kind of breakdown. And I was giving him some like, cool, well, like, here's what you should solve for. But ultimately, like, I could give him all the advice in the world. He's going to learn exponentially more from actually just chasing this goal, this dream, this business idea that he has. And just by going after it and doing it is going to be the thing that actually teaches him. The problem is, probably 90% of people just get stuck in the like, I want to do this thing, but never actually go out and end up doing the thing. And so I would say the biggest thing that really holds people back is just not starting. And then if they do start, it's not doing the uncomfortable things that are actually going to drive the process or the progress. So I think ultimately, if you're someone who is, overall doing well in life, you've succeeded in your career to some degree, maybe you make multiple six figures, something of that sort, and you want to get to the place where ultimately you want to create more leverage, right? You want to be able to still be able to pursue your career. I don't really advise that people just like quit what they're doing, but you want to start building a real asset, something real, something that can continue to grow, something that can grow on the side. We live in a day and age now where you don't necessarily need to solve everything. There are people that have already built the infrastructure, the systems, the offer, the funnels, the media, like the advertising, all of those different pieces and you can plug into other people's systems and assets. You don't have to figure out and, invent a new product and create a product production team and make prototypes and all that sort of stuff, and then invent all of the, the architecture and the funnel and the best practices and learn how to do all that stuff. We don't live in that age anymore. The beauty is you can leverage somebody else's funnel, somebody else's system, somebody else's infrastructure. If you see one of our advertisements out there in the wild, then by all means click it. But we actually intentionally don't do that. We don't have any call to actions in this media. And again, the reason is because we actually want to protect our network, and therefore, like, any traffic that's generated driven, like, we literally only onboard people through our paid media channels. So if you see one of my ads out there in the wild, you should probably click it, because if you don't, who knows if you'll ever even be able to see or access my